Joshua ripped into the raw, bloody steak with his canines as alien classmates recoiled in horror, their 8-chambered hearts palpitating wildly at his predatory display in the academy cafeteria. Professor Weason tried to maintain order, his scales paling to an anemic green as primal fear consumed him. He knew that if the human revealed humanity's true carnivorous nature to the galactic community, it could trigger a catastrophic war with the herbivorous Galactic Federation. The stakes couldn't be higher. Just minutes earlier, Joshua had been biding time in an interstellar history lecture on the dietary habits of sentient species. The diverse array of alien students listened attentively as Weason extolled the virtues of plant-based diets. Cardassians, Vulcans, and Greys all nodded along, secure in their herbivorous superiority. Then Joshua raised his hand. "What about humans, Professor? What do we eat?" The question hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Weason froze, mandibles quivering. The human couldn't be serious. He was going to expose their barbaric omnivorous practices here, in front of all the other races. Well, humans are rather unique, you see," Weason stammered, grasping for a diplomatic response. But Joshua pressed further. "That's right, we're predators, evolved to hunt and consume flesh. It's our nature." He held up the dripping steak for emphasis. The revelation of humanity's true predatory nature sent shockwaves throughout the academy. Whispers echoed in hallways as aliens struggled to reconcile the human they knew with the carnivorous creature before them. Professor Weason, desperate to diffuse tensions, announced a cultural exchange event. Each species would share a traditional dish, fostering understanding between races. Joshua saw his chance. He'd give them a real taste of Earth. In the academy kitchens, he seared a prime cut of steak to medium-rare perfection. The sizzle and aroma of cooking meat drew horrified stares from his herbivorous peers. On the day of the exchange, Joshua proudly presented his steak with mashed potatoes and steamed veggies. Most students recoiled at the sight of cooked flesh, but one Cardassian, Garrick, approached with morbid curiosity. How can you consume that? It was alive like us," Garrick stammered, pale scales trembling. Joshua cut a small piece and held it out. "Don't knock it till you try it. Meat is part of our evolution and culture. It doesn't make us evil." Tentatively, Garrick took the morsel and chewed. His eyes grew wide as rich, savory flavors overwhelmed his senses. Murmurs spread as others witnessed Garrick's reaction. Slowly, a few brave souls ventured to Joshua's station, intrigued by humanity's culinary traditions. As Joshua fielded their questions, patiently explaining the role of meat in human society, he saw a shift. Fear and revulsion gave way to curiosity, even empathy. His classmates began to see humans not just as ruthless predators, but a nuanced people with a unique history. As the cultural exchange event wound down, Professor Weason pulled Joshua aside. Weason's green scales still shimmered with sweat from his anxiety during the exchange. "Joshua, I must say, you handled yourself remarkably well today. Your steak certainly caused a stir, but you managed to turn shock into curiosity. Bravo." Joshua shrugged. "I just wanted to share a part of my culture, Professor. Humans are predators, but that doesn't define us." Weason nodded, mandibles clicking thoughtfully. "Indeed, which is why I have a proposition for you. I think it would be beneficial for the entire academy if you gave a presentation on the history of human hunting and its role in your species' evolution. It could help contextualize your culinary traditions." Joshua's eyes lit up at the opportunity. "I'd be honored, Professor. When do you want me to present?" "Let's say next week, in my interspecies relations course. I'll make it extra credit for students to attend." The following week, Joshua stood at the front of the lecture hall, a holographic display of ancient Earth flickering behind him. Garrick sat in the front row, eager to learn more about his human friend's heritage. Other students filed in, some curious, others visibly skeptical. Joshua began his presentation with the early hominids, describing how they stalked mammoths and other megafauna across the African savanna. He showed reconstructions of primitive spears and explained how the ability to hunt and consume meat allowed humans to develop larger brains and more complex social structures. As we moved from scavengers to apex predators, our ancestors gained the nutrients and energy needed to fuel their cognitive development, Joshua explained, clicking to a slide showing a graph of increasing brain size over time. This ultimately led to the rise of agriculture, domestication of animals, and our dominance on Earth. As he spoke, Joshua noticed a mix of reactions from the audience. Garrick and a few others leaned forward, their initial apprehension giving way to fascination. But a contingent of students from herbivorous species whispered amongst themselves, brows furrowed in disapproval. One of them, a militant vegan from a plant-based race, stood up abruptly. "How can you glorify such violence?" he accused, voice shaking with anger. "Your ancestors were nothing more than savages, preying on the weak and innocent." The room fell silent. Joshua took a deep breath, meeting the student's gaze calmly. "I understand your perspective," he began, choosing his words carefully. "But the reality is, our ancestors did what they needed to do to survive and thrive in a harsh world. We're not savages, but we won't apologize for our nature either. Every species in this room has its own unique history and challenges." Murmurs rippled through the lecture hall as the debate continued. Students lobbed questions and critiques at Joshua, who fielded them with patience and composure. Some remained unconvinced, but others, even the skeptics, seemed to soften their stance as they listened to Joshua's measured responses. As the presentation drew to a close, Professor Wiesen stood up, clapping slowly. "Thank you, Joshua, for that illuminating talk. I think we all learned something today about the complexities of interspecies relations and the importance of understanding each other's histories." After the students filed out, Wiesen approached Joshua with a smile. "You have a real gift for diplomacy, my boy. Have you ever considered a career in academia?" Joshua laughed. "I'm just a simple human, Professor, but I do enjoy breaking down barriers and challenging assumptions. Well, if you're interested, I'd like to offer you a position as a teaching assistant in my course next semester. I think you have a lot to offer in bridging the gap between our cultures." Joshua's eyes widened at the unexpected offer. He thought of all the progress he'd made in just a few short weeks, from the shock of his first steak to the genuine dialogue of today's presentation. Maybe this was his calling, to help build understanding between humans and the galactic community, one conversation at a time. Joshua threw himself into his duties as Professor Wiesen's teaching assistant with gusto. He relished the opportunity to share his unique perspective with the diverse student body, fostering discussions and debates that challenged long-held assumptions about human nature. One day, as Joshua was grading essays on the cultural significance of ritualized hunting, a familiar figure appeared at his office door. It was Garrick, the Cardassian student who had been so intrigued by Joshua's steak at the cultural exchange. "Joshua, I have a proposition for you," Garrick began, his scales shimmering with excitement. "As you know, I've become quite fascinated with human culture since our first encounter. I was wondering if you'd like to join me on a hunting trip to my homeworld, Cardassia Prime, during the upcoming break." Joshua leaned back in his chair, intrigued. "A hunting trip? I thought Cardassians were primarily herbivorous." Garrick nodded. "We are, but hunting has a long and storied history in our culture, dating back to our pre-spacefaring days. It's a rite of passage for young Cardassians, a test of strength, cunning, and survival skills." The prospect of learning about Cardassian traditions and showcasing human hunting techniques was too tempting to pass up. "I'm in," Joshua said with a grin. A week later, Joshua found himself standing on the surface of Cardassia Prime, a harsh desert world that seemed to shimmer with heat. Garrick led him to a small encampment on the outskirts of a sprawling city, where a group of young Cardassians were preparing for the hunt. As they set out into the barren wilderness, armed with long, slender spears and recurved bows, Joshua quickly realized that Cardassian hunting was a far cry from the tracking and pursuit he was used to on Earth. The Cardassians moved with a silent grace, blending into the rocky terrain as they set traps and waited for their prey to come to them. Over the course of the trip, Joshua and Garrick bonded over shared stories and experiences, Around the campfire at night, Joshua demonstrated human tracking techniques, showing how to read the signs of the land to follow an animal's trail. In turn, Garrick taught him the art of camouflage, how to use the play of light and shadow to become virtually invisible against the desert backdrop. As they stalked a herd of large reptilian creatures known as Tasperus, Garrick whispered to Joshua, "On Cardassia, we believe that the hunter and the hunted are two sides of the same coin. We must respect the lives we take, and never forget our own place in the grand tapestry of life." With a nod, Joshua drew back his bowstring, taking careful aim at a large male Taspera. The arrow flew true, finding its mark in the creature's heart. As they field-dressed the carcass, Joshua marveled at the reverence and gratitude the Cardassians showed for their kill, thanking the spirit of the Taspera for its sacrifice. On the journey back to the academy, Joshua and Garrick found themselves changed by the experience. They had gained not only a deeper understanding of each other's cultures, but a profound appreciation for the complex relationship between predator and prey, hunter and hunted. As they disembarked from the transport ship, Garrick turned to Joshua with a smile. "Thank you for joining me on this hunt, my friend. I feel like we've both learned a great deal about ourselves and each other." Joshua clasped Garrick's shoulder, a gesture of camaraderie that would have been unthinkable just a few short months ago. "Thank you for inviting me, Garrick. I think this trip has shown that our species have more in common than we ever realized. It gives me hope for the future of human-alien relations." With a newfound spring in his step, Joshua headed back to his quarters, eager to share his experiences with Professor Wiesen and his students. He knew that the lessons he had learned on Cardassia Prime would stay with him forever, a testament to the power of cultural exchange and open-mindedness in a vast and diverse galaxy. The exhilaration of cultural exchange still fresh in his mind, Joshua disembarked the transport ship, ready to share his newfound insights with the Academy. But as he strode across the landing pad, an unexpected sight stopped him cold. A seething mass of protesters surged against the Academy gates, their signs and chants a cacophony of outrage. Leading the charge was none other than the militant vegan from Joshua's fateful presentation. The Zorgian's leafy tendrils quivered with righteous fury as he bellowed into a megaphone. "Expel the human butcher! No more blood on Academy soil!" Joshua's heart sank as he realized the target of their ire, his hunting trip with Garrick. News of their cultural exchange had somehow leaked, twisted into a tale of wanton slaughter by the activist fringe. Placards bearing his face bobbed above the crowd, branded with slogans like "Humans, Galaxy's Apex Predators" and "Josh the Ripper." Shouldering through the throng, Joshua made his way to the administration building, only to find a grim-faced security detail awaiting him. "The disciplinary board wants to see you. Now." The lead officer's tone brooked no argument. In the austere chamber, Joshua faced a panel of stony-faced administrators, their expressions inscrutable. The board chair, a wizened Vulcan, steepled her fingers and fixed him with a piercing stare. "Mr. Halverson, you stand accused of conduct unbecoming an Academy student, namely the promotion of violence against sentient beings. What say you?" Joshua took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts. "Esteemed board members," he began, voice steady despite his nerves. "The hunting trip was not an act of cruelty, but a cultural exchange, an opportunity to learn and share traditions with my Cardassian peer." He met their gazes head-on, conviction stealing his spine. "Many species here have practices that involve animal products, the Jixori silk robes, and Dorian ice-boar leather. To single out humans for our omnivorous nature smacks of hypocrisy." The board erupted in murmurs, some nodding thoughtfully, others scowling. Professor Wiesen, perched at the far end of the table, stood and raised a clawed hand for silence. "If I may," he began, voice resonant and sure, "the Academy's very purpose is to foster understanding between species, to build bridges, not pass judgment. Young Joshua acted in the spirit of cultural exchange, not malice." Wiesen's words hung in the air as the board conferred in hushed whispers. At last the Vulcan chair spoke. "The board finds insufficient evidence of wrongdoing on Mr. Halverson's part. However, She fixed Joshua with a meaningful look. We feel this incident highlights a need for greater dialogue on the complexities of interspecies relations. She steepled her fingers once more. Mr. Halverson, we charge you with organizing a campus-wide forum on the ethics of human-animal interactions. Bring together experts from across the disciplines to share their perspectives. Use this as an opportunity to educate, not inflame. Can you do that? Joshua's mind raced with possibilities, even as relief flooding his veins. Absolutely, he said, standing a bit straighter. I'll get to work right away. As the hearing adjourned, Joshua's thoughts whirred with plans for the forum. He would invite the greatest minds from across the galaxy, xenobiologists, anthropologists, moral philosophers. Together, they would tackle the thorny questions of cultural relativism, sentience, and the ever-evolving relationship between humans and the creatures with whom they shared the stars. Over the next several cycles, Joshua threw himself into organizing the symposium. He combed through academic journals and HoloNet archives, assembling a dream team of panelists. There was Dr. Zolrak, the renowned Andorian ethicist, Marky Vex, a betazoid animal telepath, even a Klingon cultural historian Kralok, known for his provocative theories on hunting as a cornerstone of civilization. The day of the forum arrived, and the Academy's grand auditorium hummed with anticipation. Students, faculty, and curious onlookers packed the seats, a shimmering sea of scales, feathers, and skin in every hue. Joshua took his place at the podium, heart hammering against his ribs. "Welcome," he began, voice amplified by the room's acoustics. "Today we gather not to debate the superiority of one species or way of life over another, but to share knowledge, to grapple with the complex questions that arise when cultures collide." And so the conversation unfolded, each expert offering their unique lens on the ethics of human-animal relations. Dr. Zolrak spoke of the sliding scale of sentience and the need for nuance in moral considerations. Marky Vex shared tales of the rich emotional lives of creatures often dismissed as mere beasts, and Kralok, in his booming baritone, argued that the hunt was a sacred act, a way of honoring the primal bond between predator and prey. As the symposium wound to a close, Joshua retook the stage, the eyes of the galaxy upon him. "In the end," he said, voice ringing with conviction, "what sets humans apart is not our omnivorous nature, but our capacity for reason and compassion. We are thinking, feeling beings, blessed with the ability to consider the perspectives of others." He paused, gaze sweeping the rapt audience. "Let us use that gift to build bridges of understanding, even as we grapple with the complexities of our differences. For in empathy lies the path to peace." The auditorium erupted in applause, a cacophony of clicking claws, stamping hooves and whistling beaks, and as Joshua basked in the moment, he caught Garrick's eye in the crowd, the Cardassian's scaly visage split wide in a grin. For a fleeting instant, Joshua glimpsed the future he was fighting for, a galaxy where humans and aliens alike could share their stories and traditions without fear of judgment, a universe of endless possibilities built on a foundation of mutual respect and understanding. As the applause from Joshua's groundbreaking forum faded, a figure emerged from the shadows of the auditorium. Talara, a renowned Vulcan anthropologist, approached the young human, her face an impassive mask that belied the curiosity burning within. "Mr. Halverson," she began, her voice a cool monotone, "I have been following your journey with great interest. Your unique perspective on the role of meat consumption in human evolution has caught the attention of the scientific community." Joshua, still buzzing from the success of the forum, was taken aback by the Vulcan's sudden appearance. "Dr. Talara," he stammered, recognition dawning on his face, "I'm honored that my work has garnered such interest." Talara nodded, her gaze unwavering. "Indeed, which is why I have come to extend an invitation. I'm conducting a groundbreaking study on the evolutionary trajectory of humanity, and I believe your participation could be invaluable." Joshua's eyes widened at the prospect. To work alongside such a renowned researcher, to contribute to the scientific understanding of his own species, It was an opportunity he could not pass up. "I would be thrilled to join your research team, Dr. Talara," he said, his voice steady with conviction. And so began a whirlwind of scientific inquiry. Joshua found himself ensconced in Talara's state-of-the-art research facility, surrounded by a team of brilliant minds from across the galaxy. He underwent a battery of tests and simulations, each designed to probe the depths of his physical, cognitive, and emotional capabilities. "Remember, these tests are meant to gather objective data," Talara reminded him, as he stepped into a sleek metallic chamber, electrodes dotting his skin. "The simulations may be intense, but they are necessary for understanding the unique adaptations of your species." Joshua steeled himself, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. And challenges there were. Virtual hunts that tested his reflexes and problem-solving skills, dietary trials that pushed the limits of his digestive system, and psychological assessments that laid bare the innermost workings of his mind. Through it all, Talara remained a constant presence, observing, analyzing, and guiding the research with the precision of a laser scalpel. Her team worked tirelessly, poring over data streams and brain scans, searching for the keys to humanity's rapid ascent. And then a breakthrough. As Joshua lay within the confines of a neuroimaging scanner, Talara's voice crackled over the intercom, barely concealing her excitement. "Joshua, we've found something. Your brain scans. They're unlike anything we've seen before." The images revealed a complex network of neural pathways, distinct from those of any other omnivorous species in the galaxy. Talara's mind raced with the implications. The unique combination of plant and animal nutrients in the human diet, coupled with the cognitive demands of hunting and foraging, it may have been the catalyst for your species' accelerated evolution. Joshua, still reeling from the revelation, could only nod in stunned silence. He had always known that his species' dietary habits set them apart, but to see the evidence laid bare, to grasp the magnitude of its impact on their development. It was humbling, to say the least. Talara wasted no time in presenting her findings to the Academy's Scientific Council. With Joshua at her side, she laid out the groundbreaking discovery, her voice ringing with the conviction of a true scientist. "These preliminary results suggest that humanity's omnivorous diet played a crucial role in their cognitive evolution," she declared, gesturing to the vivid brain scans projected behind her. "Further study could provide invaluable insights into the very nature of sentience itself." The council erupted in a buzz of excitement, the implications of Talara's work rippling through the gathered researchers like an electric current. Joshua, still coming to terms with his own role in the discovery, found himself at the center of a maelstrom of scientific interest. Requests for interviews, collaborations, and speaking engagements flooded in from prestigious institutions across the galaxy. Joshua, the once controversial human student, had become an overnight sensation in the academic world. But even as he navigated the dizzying heights of his newfound fame, Joshua never lost sight of his original mission. He used his platform to advocate for greater empathy and understanding between species, arguing that the key to coexistence lay in embracing their differences, not ignoring them. And so Joshua continued his work, both in the lab and in the public eye, driven by an unshakable commitment to fostering harmony between humans and their alien peers. He knew that the road ahead would be long, the challenges great, but with the power of science and understanding on his side, he was ready to face whatever the future might hold. As word of Joshua's groundbreaking work with Talara spread through the scientific community, it wasn't long before it reached the ears of the Galactic Council. The Council, a governing body made up of representatives from the various sentient species of the galaxy, was tasked with promoting cooperation and understanding between worlds. They saw in Joshua's research a potential key to unlocking the secrets of sentient evolution and bridging the gap between humans and their alien counterparts. And so an invitation was extended to the young human researcher, asking him to speak at the Council's annual summit on interspecies relations. Joshua, though nervous at the prospect of addressing such an influential body, accepted the invitation with enthusiasm. He saw it as an opportunity to share his message of empathy and cooperation on a galactic scale. But as Joshua prepared for the summit, he soon learned that not everyone in the galactic community was so eager to embrace humanity. A group of conservative alien delegates, led by a prominent Cardassian politician named Dukat, viewed humanity's omnivorous nature as a threat to the delicate balance of the galactic ecosystem. They argued that, with their propensity for expansion and their adaptable diet, humans could devastate entire planets if left unchecked. Joshua knew he would have to face this opposition head-on at the summit, and face it he did. Standing before the assembled delegates, Dukat and his allies grilled the human on his species' intentions, accusing them of a lack of respect for the natural order. "You humans are like a virus," Dukat sneered, his eyes narrowing as he leaned forward in his seat. "You spread from world to world, consuming everything in your path. How can we trust a species that sees the galaxy as nothing more than a buffet?" Joshua took a deep breath, drawing on all his experiences at the Academy and his work with Talara. He met Dukat's gaze steadily, his voice ringing out clear and strong across the chamber. "Esteemed delegates," he began, "I stand before you today not to make excuses for my species, but to ask for understanding. Yes, we are omnivores. Yes, we have a drive to explore and expand. But these traits are not unique to humanity. Many of the species represented here today share similar qualities." He paused, letting his words sink in. "What sets us apart is not our biology, but our actions. And I put to you that humanity has been a force for good in the galaxy. We have made great strides in science, in technology, in medicine. We have worked to promote cultural exchange and understanding between species." As Joshua spoke, he could see some of the delegates nodding along, their expressions thoughtful. But Dukat and his allies remained unmoved, their faces twisted into scowls of disapproval. Just as it seemed the tide might turn against him, Joshua heard a familiar voice ring out from the Cardassian delegation. It was Garrick, his friend from the hunting trip, who had since become a rising star in Cardassian politics. "If I may," Garrick said, standing to address the council, "I have known Joshua Halverson for some time now. I have hunted with him, learned from him, broken bread with him, and in all that time I have never known him to be anything other than a compassionate, curious individual, eager to learn from and contribute to the galactic community." Garrick turned to face his own delegation, his voice growing stern. "We Cardassians pride ourselves on our devotion to the truth, and the truth is, humans are no more a threat to the galaxy than any other species. They should be judged by their deeds, not their diet." As Garrick took his seat, Joshua could feel the mood in the chamber shifting. Whispers broke out among the delegates as they considered the Cardassian's words. In the end, it was Joshua's impassioned defense, combined with Garrick's unexpected support, that swayed the council. They voted to continue funding Talara's research and to promote greater cooperation between humans and their alien allies. Exhausted but elated, Joshua returned to the Academy, where he was greeted as a hero by his classmates and professors. They had watched the summit unfold via holofeed, marveling at their human colleagues' eloquence and bravery in the face of adversity. But even as he basked in the glow of his triumph, Joshua knew his work was far from over. The summit had been a major victory, but it was just one battle in the ongoing struggle for interspecies understanding. There would be more challenges ahead, more minds to change, and hearts to win. But Joshua was ready for whatever the future might bring. Armed with the power of science and the support of his alien friends, he would continue to fight for a galaxy where all species could coexist in harmony. Joshua rode high on the wave of triumph from the Galactic Council Summit, his impassioned defense of humanity's place in the cosmos still ringing in his ears. But as the days turned to weeks, he found himself drawn back into the depths of scientific inquiry, his curiosity piqued by the tantalizing mysteries that Talara's research had begun to unravel. It was during one of their late-night data review sessions that Talara made the discovery that would change the course of their work. As she pored over the intricate maps of Joshua's neural pathways, a peculiar pattern began to emerge. a previously unknown network of synapses that seemed to light up whenever the human consumed animal protein. "Joshua, look at this," Talara said, her voice tight with excitement. "This pathway, it's unlike anything I've seen before. It seems to be linked to your ability to digest and process meat." Joshua leaned in, his eyes widening as he took in the glowing web of connections. "What do you think it means?" Talara's mind raced with possibilities. If we can understand how this pathway works, it could have implications far beyond the study of human evolution. Imagine if we could harness its potential to treat neurodegenerative diseases that afflict so many species across the galaxy. Joshua felt a thrill of excitement at the prospect. "What do you need me to do?" Talara hesitated, her scientific curiosity warring with her concern for her friend's well-being. "I would like to propose a new study, one that would involve a series of experimental treatments designed to stimulate this pathway and observe its effects on cognitive function. But Joshua, I must warn you, there may be risks involved." Hanso began a grueling regimen of tests and treatments, each designed to push the limits of Joshua's neural plasticity. At first, the results were promising. Joshua's cognitive scores soared, his mind seeming to fire on all cylinders as the mysterious pathway was stimulated. But as the weeks wore on, the side effects began to take their toll. Joshua found himself plagued by vivid hallucinations, his waking hours blurring into a kaleidoscope of strange visions and half-remembered dreams. He began to lose track of time, his memories slipping away like sand through his fingers. Talara watched with growing concern as her friend's health deteriorated. Joshua grew pale and gaunt, his once boundless energy sapped by the constant nausea and fatigue that racked his body. She knew she had to act before it was too late. "Joshua, we need to stop the treatments," she said, her voice heavy with regret. "I can't stand by and watch you suffer like this." Joshua, his eyes haunted and hollow, could only nod in agreement. As Talara suspended the experiments and began to investigate the cause of Joshua's adverse reactions, she found herself consumed by a growing sense of unease. It was only when she delved deeper into the data that the true scope of her discovery began to dawn on her. The neural pathway she had been studying, the one she had thought was unique to humans, was present in a wide range of carnivorous species across the galaxy. Talara felt a cold knot of dread settle in her stomach as she realized the implications of her findings. Her initial hypothesis, the one that had driven her research for so long, was fundamentally flawed. The key to understanding the evolution of sentience lay not in the consumption of meat, but in the complex interplay of a multitude of dietary and environmental factors. As she sat in her lab, surrounded by the detritus of her once promising work, Talara was forced to confront the ethical implications of her actions. In her single-minded pursuit of scientific knowledge, she had been blind to the potential risks and unintended consequences of her experiments. With a heavy heart, she went to Joshua, who was still recovering from the toll the treatments had taken on his body and mind. "Joshua, I've made a terrible mistake," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "I let my desire for answers cloud my judgment, and in doing so I put you in harm's way." Joshua, his face still pale and drawn, reached out and took Talara's hand in his own. "Talara, you couldn't have known. We were both driven by the same desire to understand, to make a difference." Together, they began to chart a new course for their research, one that took into account the complex web of relationships between species and their environments. They knew that the path forward would not be easy, but they were determined to see it through. As Joshua regained his strength, he and Talara prepared to present their revised findings to the Academy's Scientific Council. They knew that their message would be a controversial one, a challenge to the established ways of thinking about the nature of sentience and the role of science in the galaxy. But as they stood before the gathered council members, their voices ringing with conviction, they knew that they were on the cusp of something truly transformative. They spoke of the need for a new era of scientific inquiry, one that valued collaboration, compassion, and respect for all forms of life. Their words seemed to hang in the air, a clarion call to action that rippled out through the academy and beyond. In the days and weeks that followed, Joshua and Talara watched as their message began to take hold, sparking a renewed interest in the study of interspecies relations and the search for common ground between diverse cultures and biologies. For Joshua, the experience had been a transformative one, a crucible that had tested his resolve and his beliefs. But as he looked out at the sea of faces before him, each one alight with the promise of a new dawn, he knew that he had found his true calling. As Joshua and Talara's groundbreaking research on the role of diet in human evolution gained traction across the galaxy, a disturbing pattern began to emerge. Reports trickled in of alien students and researchers suffering debilitating side effects eerily similar to Joshua's own experience during the experimental treatments. At first, Joshua and Talara were baffled. They had suspended the treatments and taken every precaution to prevent others from replicating their work without proper oversight. But as they dug deeper, a chilling reality came to light. It appears that some individuals have been attempting to recreate our initial experiments in secret, Talara said, her voice tight with concern as she pored over the medical reports. Trying to unlock the secrets of human cognition and apply them to their own species without regard for the potential risks. Joshua felt a cold knot of dread in his stomach. He knew all too well the allure of scientific discovery, the temptation to push boundaries and take risks in the pursuit of knowledge, but he also knew the price that could be paid. As more and more cases surfaced, the Academy descended into chaos. Accusations flew between different factions, each blaming the other for the unethical experimentation and intellectual theft. Some demanded that Joshua and Talara be held accountable for unleashing this crisis, while others rallied to their defense. In the midst of the turmoil, a shocking revelation emerged. The neural pathway that had been the focus of Talara's research, the one that seemed to hold the key to human cognitive evolution, was not a natural feature of human biology at all. It was the result of ancient genetic engineering carried out by a long-extinct alien race. The implications were staggering. If an alien species had meddled with human evolution in the distant past, what did that mean for Joshua's own identity? For the history and destiny of his entire species? As the news spread across the galaxy, the very foundations of the galactic order seemed to tremble. Joshua found himself at the center of a maelstrom of conflicting emotions and ideologies. Some hailed him as a hero, a trailblazer who had uncovered a profound truth about the nature of sentience. Others condemned him as a harbinger of chaos, a reckless experimenter who had unleashed forces beyond his control. As tensions mounted and the Academy became a battleground of political and scientific turmoil, Joshua knew he had to take action. He couldn't stand by and watch as others suffered the consequences of his work, as the fragile peace between species unraveled around him. With a heavy heart, he made a decision that would change the course of his life and the lives of countless others. He volunteered to undergo a risky procedure to remove the engineered neural pathway from his brain, to undo the ancient meddling that had shaped his very being. If my biology is the product of alien manipulation, then I have to take responsibility for that, he told Talara, his voice shaking but resolute. I have to set an example, to show that we can't pursue knowledge at any cost, that we have to consider the ethical implications of our actions. Talara, torn between her love for her friend and her commitment to scientific truth, could only nod in agreement. She knew that Joshua's choice would have profound consequences, not only for him, but for the entire galactic community. The procedure was long and complex, a delicate dance of cutting-edge technology and ancient alien science. Joshua lay motionless on the operating table, his mind whirling with thoughts of the past and the future, of the countless generations of humans who had lived and died unaware of the hidden hand that had shaped their destiny. When he awoke, he knew immediately that something was wrong. The world seemed duller, flatter, as if a veil had been lifted from his eyes. Colors were muted, sounds muffled, emotions blunted. He struggled to form coherent thoughts, to grasp the abstract concepts that had once come so easily to him. The procedure had been only partially successful. While the engineered neural pathway had been removed, it had left behind a trail of damage, a scarring of the delicate tissues of Joshua's brain. He was left with permanent neurological deficits, a greatly diminished capacity for the higher cognitive functions that had once defined him. As he struggled to adapt to his new reality, Joshua became a symbol of the dangers of unchecked scientific ambition, of the importance of ethical considerations in the pursuit of knowledge. His story spread across the galaxy, a cautionary tale of the unintended consequences of meddling with the very fabric of life. Talara, racked with guilt over her role in the crisis, dedicated herself to helping Joshua and the other victims of the rogue experiments. She became a vocal advocate for greater oversight and accountability in scientific research, arguing passionately that the pursuit of knowledge must be tempered by a respect for the sanctity of life and the autonomy of sentient beings. "We cannot play God," she said in a widely broadcast speech, her voice trembling with emotion. "We cannot shape the course of evolution to suit our own ends without regard for the consequences. We must learn to live in harmony with the diversity of life, to cherish the unique gifts and challenges of each species." As the galaxy struggled to come to terms with the aftermath of the crisis, as species and factions grappled with the implications of ancient genetic engineering and the dangers of unrestrained scientific experimentation, Joshua and Talara's story became a rallying cry for a new era of cooperation and understanding. The Academy, once a bastion of intellectual freedom and discovery, became a hub of ethical inquiry and interdisciplinary collaboration. Researchers from across the galaxy came together to grapple with the profound questions raised by Joshua's experience, to forge a new path forward for scientific exploration in the age of cosmic engineering. And at the center of it all was Joshua himself, a changed man in a changed universe. Though he would never regain the cognitive heights he had once scaled, he found a new purpose in his role as a teacher and mentor, sharing his hard-won wisdom with a new generation of students. "We are all products of forces beyond our control," he told them, his voice soft but clear. "But that does not absolve us of the responsibility to shape our own destinies, to strive for a better future for all sentient beings. We must learn from the mistakes of the past and build a galaxy founded on empathy, compassion, and mutual understanding." As the galaxy reeled from the fallout of Joshua's sacrifice and the revelation of ancient genetic tampering, a new threat lurked in the shadows. Whispers began to circulate of a radical human faction, one that saw in the engineered neural pathway not a cautionary tale but an opportunity. They called themselves the Evolutionary Vanguard, and their leader was a figure known only as the Prophet. The Prophet's message was one of human supremacy, a twisted vision of a galaxy remade in humanity's image. He spoke of the engineered pathway as a gift, a key to unlocking humanity's true potential. In secret laboratories and hidden bases, the Vanguard began to experiment, seeking to create a new breed of enhanced humans. Their methods were brutal, their test subjects unwilling. They scoured the galaxy for the vulnerable and the desperate, promising power and purpose, only to subject them to unimaginable horrors. Rumors of their activities began to spread, dark tales of screams in the night and twisted, broken bodies discarded like refuse. Joshua, though diminished by his ordeal, could not stand idly by. When word of the Vanguard's deeds reached his ears, he knew he had to act. He gathered a small group of trusted allies: Talara, his Vulcan colleague; Garrick, his Cardassian friend; and Professor Wazan, his mentor from the Academy. Together they began to investigate, piecing together scraps of information and chasing down leads across the galaxy. It was dangerous work, for the Vanguard's reach was long and their allies many. They faced setbacks and betrayals, narrow escapes, and harrowing encounters. But they persevered, driven by a shared sense of purpose and a determination to bring the Vanguard to justice. Finally, after months of toil and sacrifice, they tracked the faction to their hidden base, a remote outpost on the fringes of known space. Infiltrating the base was no easy task, but Joshua and his team were resourceful and determined. They managed to slice into the facility's security systems, bypassing the alarms and the armed guards. Inside, they found a scene out of a nightmare. Rows upon rows of stasis pods lined the walls, each containing a twisted, mutated figure. These were the Vanguard's test subjects, the failed experiments and the discarded prototypes. Joshua and his team, though hardened by their experiences, were sickened by the sight. They pushed deeper into the facility, following the trail of atrocities. Finally, they reached the heart of the base, a cavernous laboratory filled with advanced equipment and bubbling tanks. And there, waiting for them, was the Prophet himself. He was a tall, gaunt figure, his eyes blazing with a fanatic zeal. He looked upon Joshua and his friends with a mixture of contempt and pity. "You are too late," he said, his voice a rasping whisper. "The future of humanity is already written." With a gesture, he summoned his acolytes, enhanced humans twisted by the Vanguard's experiments. They attacked without hesitation, their bodies and minds augmented to the point of inhumanity. Joshua and his team fought back with all their skill and courage, but they were outmatched. One by one they fell. Talara, ever the logical Vulcan, sacrificed herself to buy the others time, holding off a trio of acolytes with a stolen plasma rifle. Garrick, the silver-tongued Cardassian, took a devastating blow that left him broken and bleeding. Professor Wiesen, the wise old academic, was forced to confront the depths of human cruelty, and it broke him. In the end, only Joshua remained, battered and bloodied, facing down the Prophet alone. The two clashed in a final, desperate struggle, enhanced flesh against unenhanced will. It was a battle that Joshua could not hope to win, but he fought nonetheless, for his friends, for the galaxy, for the soul of his species. With a final Herculean effort, Joshua managed to activate the lab's self-destruct sequence, consigning the Vanguard's twisted research to oblivion. As the countdown ticked away, he and the Prophet, locked in mortal combat, were consumed by the blast. In the aftermath, the galaxy struggled to come to terms with what had transpired. The Academy, once a beacon of enlightenment, became a memorial to the fallen, a somber reminder of the price of progress. Garrick, broken in body and spirit, retreated from public life, haunted by the horrors he had witnessed. Professor Wiesen, his faith in the goodness of sapient beings shattered, disappeared into the void, seeking solace in solitude. And Joshua, the human who had started it all, became a legend, a cautionary tale whispered in the halls of power and the backrooms of seedy spaceports. His legacy was one of sacrifice and sorrow, a reminder of the thin line between advancement and annihilation. The galaxy moved on, as it always did, but it was forever changed by the events set in motion by a single human's fateful choice. In the years to come, when young cadets at the Academy asked about the empty chair at the founder's table, their instructors would tell them of Joshua, of his triumphs and his tragedies, and of the lesson he taught the galaxy, that the pursuit of knowledge is a double-edged sword, and that those who seek to wield it must do so with wisdom and humility. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.